Welcome back to English Through Wisdom. I hope you learned something valuable from our last lesson. It is wonderful to have you here again today.
I was 19 years old the day my English teacher handed back my notebook without a single comment written inside it. No red ink, no correction. Just silence, folded shut as if my words weren't even worth arguing with. That silence taught me something my whole town had been trying to teach me for years. That I was not the kind of girl who would ever become someone. Years later, I finally understood the wisdom hidden behind this experience. Welcome to English Through Wisdom. Here, we learn English through powerful stories, timeless lessons, and wisdom from cultures around the world. Today, we will discover a story about judgment, patience, and the quiet moment when everything began to change. Her name was Alina, and she grew up in a small river town called Thistledown, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business before it had even happened yet. She kept a notebook wrapped in brown paper, the corners soft from handling, filled with stories she never showed anyone until she made the mistake of showing 3 people. The first was her mother, who read half a page standing at the kitchen counter, then set it down beside the potatoes she was peeling. "It's sweet, Alina," she said, in the voice adults use when they mean something else entirely. "But you should think about something practical. Not everyone gets to be a writer." The second was her father, who didn't read it at all. He simply asked how long it took her to write, and when she told him 3 weeks, he laughed. Not cruelly, just tiredly. The laugh of a man who had spent 30 years fixing tractors and had no patience left for things that couldn't be measured in hours worked. The third was her teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, who taught English at Thistledown Secondary and had a reputation for honesty that everyone mistook for wisdom. She read Alina's short story about a fisherman who lost his boat and found something better on the shore, and she handed it back without comment. "It's competent," she finally said when Alina asked. "But competent isn't the same as talented, and I would hate for you to waste years chasing something the world already has enough of." Alina was 16 then. She believed her. For 3 years after that, she stopped showing anyone anything. She still wrote, secretly, at night, by the small lamp on her desk. But she wrote the way a person breathes underwater, quickly, quietly, terrified of being caught. Every rejection became proof. Every silence became an answer. She began to speak less in class, volunteer less for anything, raise her hand less. Because somewhere without noticing it, she had accepted a sentence that had been written for her by other people's mouths. It is a strange kind of grief, losing a dream while it is still alive inside you. Nobody sends flowers for it. Nobody says they're sorry. You simply wake up one day and realize you have quietly stopped hoping, and you cannot even remember the exact morning it happened. She was 19, working weekends at Old Marrow's second-hand bookshop, when she met a woman named Elsie Marrow, the owner, easily 70 years old, with reading glasses that lived on a chain around her neck, and hands stained permanently with old paper and dust. Elsie noticed things. She noticed that Alina lingered by the poetry shelf longer than she needed to. She noticed the small notebook that sometimes slipped out of Alina's bag. And one slow Tuesday afternoon, when the shop was empty except for the 2 of them and the smell of rain through the open door, Elsie asked her a question that Alina would remember for the rest of her life. "Who decided your future, Alina? You or the people who judged your past? Alina didn't answer right away. She had never thought of it as a decision that belonged to someone else. It had simply felt like the truth, handed down, permanent, like the color of her eyes. They weren't wrong to have opinions, Elsie continued, arranging books that didn't need arranging. People rarely are from where they're standing. But an opinion is not a verdict, dear. It only becomes one the moment you sign your own name underneath it. That night, Alina didn't feel inspired. She didn't run home and write until dawn, like people do in the stories she used to love. She simply lay awake, turning the question over like a stone in her palm, feeling its weight for the first time. What she decided, in the end, was quiet, almost embarrassingly small. She would not chase anyone's approval anymore. She would not argue with her mother, or convince her father, or prove anything to Mrs. Hargrove. She made herself one private promise instead. She would learn something new about writing every single day. She would improve without asking anyone to watch. And she would let her work speak, eventually, on its own, without her defending it first. Progress, in the beginning, was almost insulting in how slow it was. She read books on structure and rewrote the same paragraph 9 times. She joined an online forum under a fake name, so no one from Thistledown would recognize her. And she posted a story that received exactly 2 comments, one of which simply said, "Okay." There were nights she cried over sentences that refused to work. There were mornings she almost quit, telling herself that Mrs. Hargrove had probably been right all along, that competence really was her ceiling. But she kept the promise anyway. The way you keep watering a plant you're not sure is alive anymore, simply because stopping feels like giving up on something you can't yet prove exists. 2 years passed like that, mostly unnoticed by anyone but her. Then, one gray November morning, a flyer appeared on the community board outside the post office. The Regional Council was hosting its first ever Thistledown Valley Short Story Prize, open to any resident, judged by an editor from a real publishing house in the city, with the winning story printed in the regional paper and considered for a literary anthology. Alina stood in front of that flyer for almost 10 minutes. Every part of her old fear woke up at once. The version of her that remembered Mrs. Hargrove's silence. The version that remembered her father's tired laugh. Submitting meant being seen, and being seen meant risking, once again, the exact verdict she had spent 2 years trying to survive. She almost walked away. She actually did walk away halfway down the street before she stopped, turned around, and made herself finish reading the entry requirements twice. She submitted a story called What the River Kept, about a girl who is told for years that she is too ordinary for anything extraordinary to happen to her. Until she learns that ordinary and unfinished are not the same word. She told no one she had entered. Not her mother, not her father. Certainly not Mrs. Hargrove. 6 weeks later, Elsie Marrow called her at the shop, her voice unusually fast for a woman who never rushed anything. "Alina," she said, "you need to come see today's paper." Her story was on the front page of the regional arts section. Not a mention of it. The entire thing printed in full, with her name spelled correctly beneath the title, and beneath that, a short paragraph from the judging editor describing her voice as, in her words, startlingly assured for a young writer, the kind of clarity that usually takes decades to earn. Word moves quickly in a small town, faster than any of Alina's stories ever had. Her mother called her that evening, her voice thick in a way Alina hadn't heard before. "I didn't know you were still writing," she said. "I would have read more of it if I'd known it mattered this much to you." Her father brought the newspaper to the garage and left it, folded open to her page, on the workbench where his co-workers would see it. He never mentioned it to her directly. He didn't need to, and Mrs. Hargrove, 2 weeks later, stopped Alina outside the grocery store, holding the newspaper clipping carefully as though it might tear. "I always thought there was something in your writing," she said. "I'm glad you kept going." Alina looked at her for a long moment, and something inside her, something that had been clenched for 3 years, finally loosened. She wasn't angry. She was simply certain, for the first time, of something Elsie had tried to tell her long before this moment arrived. Their opinions had not changed because they'd finally seen the truth. Their opinions had changed because her results had. The truth about her had been the same the entire time. The real victory, Alina realized, standing outside that grocery store with the wind pulling at the newspaper in her teacher's hands, was not the article or the prize or even the apology disguised as praise. The real victory was smaller and far more permanent than any of that. She no longer needed a single one of them to sign off on who she was allowed to become. There is an old saying, believed to have roots in several farming cultures across Eastern Europe, though its exact origin has been lost to time, so we cannot confirm one single source for it. It is often spoken in Polish as "nie ten mądry, kto wie, ale ten, kto się nie poddaje," which translates roughly to, "It is not the wise one who knows, but the one who does not give up." The saying was born in communities where a single harvest could fail for years before finally succeeding, and farmers needed a way to explain, to their children and to themselves, why persistence mattered more than early proof of talent. It reminded people that ability is rarely visible in its early stages. What is visible, instead, is simply whether a person continues. This is exactly the quiet engine behind Alina's story. Nobody in Thistledown doubted her because they were villains. Her mother wanted safety for her. Her father measured worth in hours he could understand. Mrs. Hargrove genuinely believed she was protecting a teenager from disappointment. Their doubt came from limited evidence, and limited evidence is simply what everyone has, always, about someone else's future. The wisdom survived for generations because it solves a problem every culture eventually faces. How do you convince a young person to keep going before the world has given them any proof that it's worth it? You tell them that the wise are not the ones who see the ending clearly. The wise are simply the ones who refuse to stop walking toward it. Alina's transformation did not begin with a burst of confidence. It began with a single, uncomfortable question from an old woman in a bookshop, and it was completed years later through nothing more dramatic than daily, unwitnessed effort. That is precisely why this proverb endures. It never promised her an easy path. It only promised that the path existed, as long as she kept walking it. Most of us are carrying at least one version of Mrs. Hargrove's silence somewhere inside us. A comment from a parent, a grade from a teacher, a joke from a sibling that was never meant to be remembered for 20 years, and yet somehow was. Have you ever believed a label about yourself simply because the person who gave it to you sounded certain? Have you ever judged someone quickly, the way Alina's family did, without realizing you were handing them a sentence they might carry for years? The uncomfortable truth in this story is that Alina's critics were never punished for being wrong. They simply changed their minds once the evidence changed, the same way most people do. That is not villainy. That is human nature. Which means the real question this story leaves us with is not, how do I make people believe in me? It is, can I learn to believe in myself before they do? What would you create today if you were certain no one was allowed to judge it until it was finished? What promise, like Alina's small quiet one, could you make to yourself this week? One that depends on nobody's applause to survive. I would love to hear your answer in the comments below. Competent, meaning having enough skill to do something acceptably, but not exceptionally. Example, her cooking is competent, but it doesn't yet impress anyone. Verdict, meaning a final decision or judgment about something. Example, I'm still waiting for my manager's verdict on my proposal. Linger, meaning to stay somewhere longer than necessary, often because you don't want to leave. Example, she lingered at the doorway, unsure if she should say goodbye. Assured, adjective, meaning confident and self-believing without needing others' approval. Example, he walked into the interview with an assured, calm expression. Insulting, meaning something that feels disrespectful or offensively slow, unfair, or dismissive. Example, the pay raise felt almost insulting after all the extra hours I worked. Startle, startling, meaning to surprise someone suddenly, often causing a small shock. Example, the loud knock at the door startled everyone in the room. Endure, meaning to continue existing over a long period, often despite difficulty. Example, their friendship endured even after years of living in different countries. Clarity, meaning the quality of being clear and easy to understand. Example, I appreciated the clarity of her explanation during the meeting. Rejection, meaning the act of refusing or dismissing someone's idea, offer, or effort. Example, after 3 job rejections, she finally received an offer she loved. Permanent, meaning lasting forever or for a very long time, not temporary. Example, getting that promotion felt like permanent proof of her hard work. Ceiling, used figuratively, meaning an invisible limit on how far someone can grow or achieve. Example, he refused to believe that his background was his career ceiling. Witnessed, unwitnessed, meaning seen or not seen by other people. Example, most of her progress happened quietly, completely unwitnessed by her family. Repeat this paragraph aloud, slowly at first, then at natural speaking speed. She made herself one private promise. She would learn something new every single day. She would improve without asking anyone to watch. And she would let her work speak, eventually, on its own, without her defending it first. Progress, in the beginning, was almost insulting in how slow it was. But she kept the promise anyway. The way you keep watering a plant you're not sure is alive anymore, simply because stopping feels like giving up on something you can't yet prove exists. Alina's story reminds us that the loudest opinions in a room are rarely the truest ones. Her wisdom, borrowed from a saying older than her small town, teaches us that persistence matters more than early proof. And today, you practiced English through real emotion, real vocabulary, and a real reminder that your future still belongs to you. Keep learning English, keep discovering stories, and keep collecting wisdom from around the world. Note on accuracy. Alina and the town of Thistledown are fictional, created for this story, as requested. The proverb's exact origin could not be verified from a single confirmed historical source, so I've stated that limitation directly in Part 4 rather than presenting it as a confirmed fact.
If you enjoyed learning English through this ancient saying, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this wisdom today. Until next time, keep learning English and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.